It's the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and a report card came out during the Combine week that was talking about grading teams and the organizations on different levels of their organization. And the question came up, are the Steelers being cheap about different aspects of the organization? We'll talk about that, free agent needs outside of the Combine, outside of the NFL draft, and we'll get to some Pirates talk right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive Podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Welcome to the North Shore Drive Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here joined by Brian Batko, one of our esteemed Steelers beat writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which you can get all of our content at post-gazette.com. You can also find this show, the North Shore Drive Podcast, on our podcasting platform, anywhere that podcasts are hosted, especially on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all the Post-Gazette's daily content, as well as the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive Podcast. Brian is back home in Pittsburgh. I'm on the road in Greensboro, North Carolina, getting ready to cover the ACC tournament as Pitt takes on Georgia Tech 2:30 in the Greensboro Coliseum.
You see me repping.
You got an ACC hat on, Brian. Do you feel the ACC is being disrespected by the Ken Palms of the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ACC football hat from my days covering Pitt for the PG, but it's close enough. And I am legitimately excited for day 2 of the ACC men's basketball tournament today. I think there's 4 good games on tap. You know, common viewers might know that while I cover the Steelers and football, basketball is my true love. So I'm looking forward to these games today, not just Pitt, Georgia Tech, but the other 3 are pretty juicy too, I think. So kind of jealous of you being down there in Greensboro. You've just been a traveling man, Chris, from Indy to Greensboro with who knows where you were jet setting off to in between.
I was in Dallas, baby. I was doing some partying with real quick, and then I came right here.
With Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones. That's how I just wanted to get to him. He's one of my anonymous sources. But in all seriousness, I mean, it's very exciting here as Pitt getting ready to take on Georgia Tech. But we're here to talk Steelers, and let's talk Steelers because there was a report card system that came out as that was pertaining to different parts of the organizations, and I felt like it was an odd scale of how to grade things, but it didn't reflect too well on the Steelers. You wrote about for the Pittsburgh Post. Can you break down what this was and what it actually meant for the Steelers?
Yeah, so essentially the NFL Players Association, basically the players union, undertook this effort to gauge reaction from former and current players who've been on multiple teams and have kind of seen the league. And I guess, some of the respondents probably haven't. Some maybe only know the organization they've been in. But either way, they got, more than 1,000 people to fill out this survey grading teams on everything from how they are set up to, accommodate families at games with stuff like, family gathering areas, daycare rooms for little kids, to the size of their weight rooms, to their nutrition in the cafeteria. So a lot going on there. Basically, working conditions or quality of life in terms of when you're there at the practice complex every day and stuff like that. And then the union took all the responses and followed up on that with some color. Don't just give us a quantitative grade, but tell us why you feel this way about this particular team. And of course, all anonymous. But having done all of that legwork, which I give them credit for, they then wrote a report essentially ranking all 32 from best to worst, combining all of these many factors. And the Steelers finished 22nd in that ranking. A lot of players complaining about, I guess I shouldn't say complaining because I don't know. I mean, but just pointing out maybe matter-of-factly that the facilities are badly in need of a renovation in their opinion. Maybe not enough staffers in the training rooms and weight rooms, lacking in terms of some of those family accommodations that I mentioned. And they generally graded the people high, the quality of the staff, but it seems like it's more of a facilities and resources issue that they have more than anything. So I just, I think that's interesting when something like that comes out because, Chris, when you talk to players one-on-one on the record publicly, they're going to have nothing but good things to say about their team and their franchise. But this puts a little bit more of a critical eye, I think, on not just the Steelers, but all of their counterparts and peers in the league.
Do we know how many players in that survey like exactly said the facilities weren't good or whatever the rating was?
Well, 44% of players, I guess, said that they don't feel that Art Rooney II is willing to invest money into upgrading those facilities. And he was tied for 29th in that category. So, that's going to catch the eye of fans who want to throw out this mantra that Art Rooney II is cheap or Steelers ownership is cheap. I don't necessarily know that it's something that simple or boiled down. I mean, that's going to be what people get their pitchforks out and say. But I think a lot of it is more practicality of things or lack thereof. Their training complex down on the south side was built 23 years ago. We know that Acrisure Stadium was built about the same amount of time ago. It's in its third decade now of use on the North Shore since replacing Three River Stadium for the Steelers. So keeping up with the Joneses is difficult in pro sports when it comes to these matters. And as far as like the practice facility specifically, you are there every day too, Chris, covering Pitt. It's wedged into a hillside sort of, or not a hillside, but a valley kind of, if you want to call it that, with the train tracks on one side, the Monongahela River on the other side. It's not even a secret. It says right on their website, their practice fields are only 80 yards long. So it's not even a full length NFL field. You can imagine that things are a little bit jammed in there. So I think all of that is probably part of it. There's no easy fix for that. If you're Art Rooney II, you can't just say, here's $1 billion, go expand this, because we're talking about natural physical obstacles that you have there to do those things. And just looking around the division, AFC North, similar cities in terms of size and layout. The Bengals didn't rank very high on this report card. They didn't even have their own indoor practice facility until this season. So that players are going to be dismayed by that. They got an overall F there. They ranked 27th. Wow. The Browns ranked 21st, so one spot ahead of the Steelers, and the Ravens 17th. I'm just saying a lot of the teams in this area of the country face similar challenges, and I think it's an area where the Steelers certainly need to improve. And Juju just last offseason was pretty open about, hey, the locker rooms need refreshed. We're kind of in the Stone Ages, to paraphrase what he was saying, compared to a place like Dallas where it's a spaceship down there at the Cowboys facility. So, these are – they don't tangibly affect the on-field product, obviously. Your players are playing, your coaches are coaching, your front office is making moves. Where they do that doesn't really matter. But the NFLPA said that they want to use this to inform players when they're trying to make decisions in free agency of what they might be getting into, good or bad. So I think it is relevant. And, I definitely, maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, but we reached out to the Steelers for comment. Haven't heard back from them on that. I guess it's kind of one of those tough deals. What do you say? Because it's not really a matter of the interpersonal relationships. I've never talked to a player who didn't appreciate the Rooney family and everything they do. By all accounts, they are very involved. Art Rooney II is always at the practice facility. He's not an absentee owner. I've heard many stories of he and his wife, Greta, taking players and their families out to dinner and kind of showing them around when they come here. So, I don't think it's like that he's aloof or anything like that, but they're just difficult challenges that the Steelers face. And these are places where they probably need to improve to be more competitive with the rest of the NFL.
I feel you on that. And it brings up back to the question, are the Steelers being cheap? Is Art Rooney being cheap? I want to actually dig into that a little bit more as we start to talk about free agency and some of the things the Steelers could do here coming up as free agency is now a week away. But we'll talk about that in just a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast. First, I'm going to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at Valley Pool and Spa. And Valley Pool and Spa, of course, is the option for you to always install a hot tub, a swim spa, or a sauna right in your own home so that you can relax without having to go anywhere. Valley Pool and Spa gives you options like Finlay saunas that are going to help melt your stress away, feel refreshed, feel relaxed, and then you're going to go out and retackle your day refreshed and ready to go. And there's all the chances to save money on getting any of these installed by going to their website, valleypoolspa.com. Go to valleypoolspa.com and you'll find all their in-stock hot tubs, swim spas, and saunas, and discounts that you can save big on right there. Visit valleypoolspa.com. Again, that's valleypoolspa.com. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Brian Batko, Steelers beat writer here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Brian, let's delve a little bit more into the aspect of Art Rooney II being quote-unquote cheap, because I think that it feels like it's something that bleeds over from the Pirates side of the town where, everyone accuses Bob Nutting of being cheap because of the amount of payroll. But the Steelers, of course, don't have the problem because they're paying up to the salary cap pretty much every year. But where this also ties into is that the Steelers have the smallest coaching staff in the NFL. And people say, well, they're the cheapest coaching staff, but it's because they have the least amount of personnel in the league, or if not the least, very close to it. And it brings up the question, is there a spending issue with the Steelers? Of course, the Steelers aren't the most valuable NFL franchise out there. There's a lot of bigger cities that have bigger franchises and everything. But I personally, as a person who's followed the Steelers, it never occurred to me that they might be shorting out on something. Do you feel like that's actually a concern, or it's just more of just how the Steelers operate right now, and less about them trying to save money and just more about like, hey, we think this is the best way we need to roll right now?
I think they're strategic in a lot of ways with how they spend their money, and I don't think they're going to sink money into something for no reason. It is a business at the end of the day, and you're right, Chris. I mean, they don't, they don't cheap out on things like roster construction. When they say they're trying to win the Super Bowl every year, they go out and they operate that way in terms of spending to the cap, and even kind of kicking the can down the road at times when you get into that space. But I think the other part of it too is, this goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment. They took a lot of heat when they gave Acrisure Stadium the new naming rights with a company that didn't have the local ties to Pittsburgh that a lot of fans would want. But if you think back to that press conference with Art Rooney II and the Acrisure CEO, Greg Williams, the Steelers president said that it's going to give them a chance to be more competitive around the league in terms of things like their resources and their facilities, and that they will reinvest a lot of this money back into the team. Now, obviously, having more money in your pocket doesn't mean you can spend more on the salary cap. That's not how it works, obviously. But yeah, you can pay more for coaches. You can make some of these improvements maybe that your players are asking for or would want you to do. We know that they've already done some renovations in the bathrooms at Acrisure Stadium, which you may or may not get much mileage out of. But that's the whole reason why you take steps like that as an owner on the business side of things, is so that you can overcome some of the more natural just obstacles that you face. And like you said, Chris, yes, the Steelers valued very highly as a franchise, but Art Rooney II isn't as rich as some of these owners in the NFL. When you talk about people who made their money in the business world and just can spend so much cash over cap, as they call it, the NFL front office nerds. I won't pretend to be that smart, but there was a lot made over the last couple of years of how the Rams were really kind of spending money out of pocket to overpay people that they'll eventually have to square up with the cap, but it allowed them to really push all their chips into the middle for one season and go for it they did, winning the Super Bowl a couple years ago. So yeah, I mean, as far as free agency goes, a little bit of a different subject, but it does go back into what the Steelers are kind of willing to spend right now on this current team. I think that they can certainly get creative. It's just going to be a matter of, do you want to do that right now, or do you feel like there's a certain calculation in terms of the Kenny Pickett factor the contract factor with players like TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward. I assume Omar Khan will have some restructuring up his sleeve, and he'll do some things to create room as they do every year, whether it was him calling the shots now or Kevin Colbert previously. But I don't think there's much that will preclude them from making a big splashy move if they want to do that in free agency. It's not really in their nature, but who knows? We're all kind of learning Omar Khan's way of doing business here for the first time. We've never seen it before.
Well, let's switch to that because I think it's very different when people talk about, the Steelers spend on players every single year. That's not where the issue is. If you're going to complain about the facilities and maybe about how many coaches they have, that's one thing. But again, we're talking about stylistic here. But let's talk about free agency for a second here. There is a potential for the Steelers to kind of retool themselves in free agency if they make the right moves. We've talked about, one, cutting William Jackson III, which I think will automatically happen very soon. Restructuring other guys, maybe letting some certain other players go who weren't as contributory this year, and then restructuring some contracts and maybe opening up some cap space that you could sign some guys in free agency. The reports are flying around that Bud Dupree could be let go by the Tennessee Titans sometime soon. He was paid a huge contract from them and has only had like 4 sacks in 2 years or something like that. So he hasn't worked out. He's still been dealing with injuries. Is that a realistic target for the Steelers in free agency here? If they do you foresee that happening and then there being that phone call? It's like, hey, Bud, come home, and it's for a reasonable number because, of course, they can't overpay him because they're trying to probably pay Alex Highsmith right now.
I wouldn't bet on it because of a lot of those aspects you just mentioned. Number one, how much is he going to be willing to play for? Now, to some extent, your value is only what a team's willing to give you. And like exactly. You said, Chris, with what he did the last couple seasons, or what he didn't do, how little he did, I don't know what kind of market there would be for him from one of the other 30 teams, not counting the Titans or the Steelers. So he might have to swallow his pride a little bit and take much less than he got. At least he cashed in once with the Titans and got that franchise tag from the Steelers, which paid him pretty handsomely. But he's also getting up there in age. I think he's 30 now. The Steelers generally don't, spend much on those older free agents who've got a lot of wear and tear. They did a couple years ago at this spot with Melvin Ingram, someone who had similar, probably even a little bit better resume than Bud Dupree career-wise when they brought him in. That blew up in their face a little bit. He didn't want that role. He eventually kind of forced his way out, and as we know, they traded him for a late-round pick. So I don't think you'd have to worry so much about the personal dynamics with Bud Dupree. I think it would be clear to him that if he comes here, you're going to be now sort of the low man on the totem pole. Yeah, as opposed to when you were the big dog who was mentoring TJ Watt in a way, definitely mentoring Alex Highsmith behind you, who was working to, let's be honest, take your job. That eventually happened. He would have to know what he's getting into now as that rotational outside linebacker. Maybe he's willing to do that. Maybe he's willing to do it for a cheap price for an organization that he knows and likes. Granted, we're not sure how he feels about the family gathering area at the stadium or the nutrition in the cafeteria, but which the Steelers scored quite well on, by the way. Anyway, getting back to the free agency part of it, I think it's possible, but again, wouldn't bet on it just because I think there are more cons than there are pros if you're the Steelers. He's also been banged up a lot, and you probably feel like you're at a point now where you're comfortable enough with your starters at edge rusher that behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, like you just want a young player, ascending player who's on a very cheap deal to finally break out and play well enough to be that third guy. I don't know if that guy's on the roster. Is it Quincy Roche? Is it Jameer Jones taking the next step? I don't think that's going to happen with him because we've already seen him plenty and it hasn't happened. Is it a rookie that you draft? So, we'll see. There are a lot of potential reunions in free agency this year with the Steelers. Josh Dobbs is going to hit the open market, and we know they might need a number 3 QB. Juju is going to be back available. I don't know if you can put that toothpaste back in the tube, but we know that they like to revisit with some of their old friends from time to time. They've done it plenty over the years.
We'll see if they do that soon in free agency that kicks off in about a week here in the NFL. It's going to be a wild time. People signing over here. Lamar Jackson got franchise tag, but can still be competed with his contract around the league. We'll talk more about that Friday when we have more time. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. We got to switch it over to baseball. Jason Mackey's been covering the Pirates in Bradenton as they're getting ready for their season. Is there an upside to the season? Is there an upswing coming? Are the Pirates going to surprise everyone and actually be better than what they've been projected to be? We'll find that out in a little bit here. But first, before we talk about any of that, we got to talk to you guys about Yins in the Berg, the number one place for you to go for all your Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. Yins in the Berg is the top place to get all your Steelers, Pirates, Penguins, Pitt, anything Pittsburgh sports. They're that gear that you can get right at Yins in the Berg. And the Yins in the Berg has 2 stores in the Strip District that you can visit at any point in time. Pick up your favorite merch. Get it for yourself. Get it for your friends. Get it for a loved one. Anyone, you can get it as a gift. It's an awesome place to get a lot of different options. You can also, if you can't get to the Strip District, just go to their website, yinzerspgh.com. It's yinzerspgh.com, and you'll find that their merchandise is updated weekly there with new gear on the Steelers, Pirates, Penguins, Pitt, and so much more. Check out Yinzers in the Berg and their website, yinzerspgh.com. That's yinzerspgh.com. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined now by one of our great Pirates beat writers, Jason Mackey. He's on the road in Bradenton, Florida, while I'm out here in Greensboro, North Carolina. We are the Post-Gazette, man. We're everywhere. But, Jason, you've been in Bradenton. You've seen this Pirates team working through some things. They won their game on Tuesday. But you've been seeing reason, you wrote about this, to say, like, there's some of these guys that are coming up that are starting to make things look a little bit more promising for the Pirates. What have you seen that's caused their stock to kind of rise in these times?
Yeah, I wrote about 2 guys today, Chris, that I'm really big on. I think are going to have really interesting years. Mike Burrows and Colin Holderman. If you haven't checked that piece out, please do. Post-Gazette.com. But I linked the 2 of them, and they're really not related in many ways, but I linked the 2 of them through their slider work. That's been their most noticeable thing, where Holderman basically said, I'm going to throw a cutter, and then a trend around baseball called a sweeper. It's basically having like a hard cutter and then one that's a little slower and more horizontal. Anyway, Burrows kind of made his out from scratch, but those are 2 guys that have been really intriguing to me. Chris, Andy Rodriguez is somebody that, people are really excited about for understandable reasons. I'm watching him play first, second, catch, kid can hit. Working on a piece in the next few days involving him and Henry Davis. Those are 2 reasons to be optimistic. I've also liked what I've seen from the veteran guys. Andrew McCutchen has been, sort of fresh on the brain. He got this gigantic monster truck that everybody was talking about this morning. It was fun. It just, that's not relevant to playing baseball. It was just relevant to my morning, and it was fun. Rich Hill's been really good for the pitching staff. Austin Hedges, I've loved his work behind the plate. I'm not saying that these guys are going to be like Gold Glovers, Silver Sluggers, MVPs, but are they going to make the Pirates better than they were the past couple of years? Yes, I believe that.
And this is where you and I were talking about this like a month ago before you went down to Bradenton. And I wanted to get this sense, like, is this like, do you feel the remnants, is this compared to the early 2010s Pirates when they were building towards their years when they made the playoff runs? It was like 2012, they started to get a little bit better. 2013, they were getting really close. And then 2014 or 2015, that was when they crossed the line and they were able to get to the playoffs and do that. That was when I was like, as a person who grew up in Pittsburgh, I'm like, the Pirates are in the playoffs. Like, this is amazing. Yep. I don't think that I'm with you. I don't see them as that kind of this team now, but do you see the remnants of being the team that could be setting up to be the core that eventually does get the Pirates back to that relevancy?
I do, Chris. I do. And that's what they're pushing toward. I know a lot of people want to see 2013 now, and I understand why. I want to see it too. I'm sure the Pirates want to see it, but the way they're building this thing is hopefully to create a more sustainable model. And what I mean by that is like that 2013-14 group, they did a lot of things really well. They got international players. They drafted well. They made smart trades. They were better with development. And then if you look at after that, what happened? I mean, those things stopped. They drafted poorly. They made dumb trades. They didn't develop guys particularly well. In some cases, like the Tyler Glasnow, Chris Archer mess, like those things happened like in the same transaction. So yes, I mean, that's what you're seeing here. You have a bunch of good young players. Some are going to pan out. Some aren't. That's just the way the sport works. Hopefully you build it around pitching. I like some of the young pitching that they have. I really do. Two guys, you asked me earlier about young guys that give me feelings of optimism. Like Quinn Priester's been really good. Kyle Nicholas, Carmen Majinski. These are guys you're going to see this season. And, if those guys pan out, you have a pretty good young core of position players. Brian Hayes, O'Neal Cruz, Rodolfo Castro, Malcolm Nunez. I wrote about him yesterday. Hopefully they keep Brian Reynolds around, potentially Jack Sawinski, Jared Triolo or whatever. I won't go down the list too far. And Endy, I mentioned him before, but you get those guys to pop the way they did in 13, 14, 15, and that's going to be a halfway decent baseball team. Now, I see this group as they're going to tease you a little bit. They're going to be young. They're going to be exciting. There's some veterans here that I think are going to help the cause. I don't think they ultimately have enough, but shoot, Chris, if this team wins 73, 74, 75.
Oh, I mean, this town would be like, okay.
I think people will believe it. They'll say, okay, see what you're talking about here. I'll listen. And then maybe another year. And I think then you're going to really see them break through.
I think that's what, again, just being relevant, not being out of it in, July, like they have been for the past several years. That would be fun to watch. I want to get your sense of Andrew McCutchen, how you've seen him interact with the team. It's because this was the house that he built when the Pirates became relevant and were this team. But then, of course, he left, and it's been several years that house has basically fallen back down. What is his dynamic with the other players? Because he was the guy that brought the fun and the environment that was kind of built around that mid 2010s team there. What is he doing right now to kind of, I guess, get in the respect of some of the younger guys and to be a person who can point them in the right direction to get back to winning?
Chris, observing the McCutchen dynamic here has been really fascinating. And I sort of get it now, seeing more. I thought when we were back at Pirate City, Kutch honestly didn't say a lot to anybody. And then talking to more people about when he was new here the first time around, said Kutch didn't talk to anybody for a while. And it's not that he doesn't want to. I think it's that it's got to be organic. It's got to be natural. He doesn't want to come in here and just start saying, I'm Andrew McCutchen, and I know this because I'm Andrew McCutchen, and you should listen to me. I think there's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens, a lot of on-field stuff. He certainly talks to people, but Kutch is not boisterous by any stretch. Now, that being said, there's a very, very noticeable presence around where he goes, what he does, who's looking at him. Obviously the house that he built, right? I know it was overstated for effect, but I get what you're saying. He matters down here. He matters to people. He matters to fans. I sit down by the Pirates dugout for games, and every single home game at Lecom, I hear a fan say, "Welcome back, Kutch. You look good in black and gold, Kutch." People just love this dude, and for completely understandable reasons.
Yeah.
But anyway, that started to change a little bit, where he's starting to talk a little bit more. I mentioned the thing about the monster truck. That was just fun. The type of truck, and that's causing a lot of fun conversations with guys, and he's loosening the group up. And I'm starting to think about, I see it now. He doesn't want it to be inauthentic. He's not an inauthentic person, but you can't just create that. And so, we're starting to see some of those seeds, pop above the dirt or whatever, however you want to describe it there.
No, I got you. You talked about some of the young guys that are starting to look better, but there's younger guys who have been better. You talked about Cabrian, you talked about Cruz.
Yep.
When you look at Cabrian and O'Neal Cruz and those guys, is there a clear younger guy who is kind of setting the tone for hey guys, this is going to be a different year. Things are moving forward, or is everyone kind of just being around each other and just growing on their own and working on things? Because I'm always intrigued to learn. When teams make turnarounds, when, like with Pitt basketball, the veteran leadership that they brought in has changed the culture of the program. I'm always intrigued to see who are the young stars that are taking part in that and trying to also put a hold and saying, hey, I want to be part of this movement to fix things around here.
There's been a few, Chris, but honestly, I think the story with this team, at least right now, is having some adults in the room, and having the Rich Hills, Carlos Santana's, Austin Hedges's, those guys, they can't go anywhere without being followed. And I say being followed, it's in a good way. People want to hear what Austin Hedges has to say about catching and the mechanics of catching. Carlos Santana, his locker is in the far corner of Lecom Park, and you can't go there with Andujar's always around, Castro's always around, Cruz is always around. like the younger Dominican Latin players. It's been such a big thing for them. And, I've witnessed Andy Rodriguez and Henry Davis just like, lapping up whatever Hedges has to say. And so like, that's been a big thing. Now there are younger players on this team that I think are going to take a step forward. Like Jack Sawinski has had a noticeably different presence. Mitch Keller has had a noticeably different presence, like almost like he can kind of exhale a little bit and just throw. Mitch has done that. Rowanzi Contreras is somebody I expect to take a big step forward this year. So it's been a little bit of what you're talking about, but I think the bigger story probably is veterans at this point.
I think that's going to be a big question. Can the veterans be step up? Who steps up to follow them and takes the mantle from them? Because those guys won't be around forever. Like, Kutch isn't exactly here for the next 10 years or anything like that. He's not going to be leading the charge. So we'll see all that. You can read all of that at the Post-Gazette. You can go to post-gazette.com where Jason's giving you exclusive coverage there down there in Bradenton, Florida. Jason, thanks so much for joining us here in the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for checking us out here on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel for all of our daily Pittsburgh Post-Gazette content, as well as our Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows. We're back Friday. We'll talk with Ray Fittipaldo on the Steelers and updates as they get ready for free agency. All that and more right here on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.